truly extraordinary. We registered millions of people to vote, we recruited folks across this country to serve as volunteers, and we got millions of Americans out to the polls in this past election. So we should all be proud of what we accomplished. But let's be clear, all that hard work was about more than just one election. So if we want to finish what we started and truly make that change we believe in, we can't stop now. And that's why today, I'm proud that our friends and supporters are launching Organizing for Action.
That has not come up yet. The New York Times reported on Saturday that there's, it's already been reported Organizing for Action is this outside group connected with some of the president's former campaign aides. They want to push gun control and other issues on his agenda. The report over the weekend that was new was suggesting that donors are going to be able, if they put up $500,000, which is obviously a lot of money, they're going to get special access to the president. They're going to have quarterly meetings here at the White House. That suggests that access to the president is being sold?
No. OFA, which you are asking about, is an independent organization that, as reported in the press, will engage in advocacy and grassroots mobilization activities around public policy issues. It will not be engaged in political campaign-related activities. It has been organized to rally support for the president's policy agenda, but is a separate organization. Administration officials routinely interact with outside advocacy organizations, and this has been true in prior administrations, and it is true in this one.
Right,
on the broader issue of
access to the president of the United States, that's different.
On the broader issue of money in politics generally, the president has been very clear that we should be doing more to reduce the role of money in politics. The president and Democrats on Capitol Hill backed the Disclose Act, that would close loopholes and bring more transparency to the political system, but it was blocked by Republicans. President Obama has also outlined additional concrete steps Congress should take to eliminate the corrosive influence of money in Washington, like holding Congress to the same conflict of interest standards as the executive branch and prohibiting lobbyists from bundling and bundlers from lobbying. The fact is, there are a variety of rules governing interaction between administration officials and outside groups, and administration officials follow those rules. White House and administration officials will not be raising money for Organizing for Action, and while they may appear at appropriate OFA events in their official capacities, they will not be raising money.
But you're not denying the point that was reported by the New York Times that even though he's for all those reforms, that if you give $500,000 or more to this group, you get access to the president.
Again, the president,
is that true or
the
false?
president is engaged in an effort to pass items on his agenda, and outside organizations that support that agenda, like organizations that are environmental in nature and support aspects of the president's environmental agenda, or organizations that support his manufacturing agenda, administration officials can meet with them, including the president. But the fact of the matter is, this is an independent organization that is supporting an agenda.
Price tag to see the president?
No.
It's not.
Of course not.
So $500,000 does not guarantee you access to the president.
Look, this is an independent organization. I would point you to that organization for how it raises its money. It has said quite clearly, distinguishing it from other organizations, that it will disclose its donors. But I would direct your questions to them about how they. Correct, and I would point you to that organization.
Thanks,
Peter.
Jay.
So is the New York Times going to correct that part?
When the president ran in 2007, he used these exact language. He said, the cynics, the lobbyists, and the special interests who turned our government into a game only they can play, they write the checks and you get stuck with the bills. They get the access while you get to write a letter. Doesn't this in many ways, though, create a situation that does blur that line of exactly what he was campaigning against in 2007, that he couldn't communicate to those people, even though independent, to say to them, this isn't the way my administration wants to work?
The president has been very clear what his agenda is. This is an independent organization that supports the policy initiatives that the president puts forward, not unlike a variety of so-called 501c4 organizations. The fact of the matter is, the president has continually pressed for greater transparency in our political system. He very famously made clear his feelings about a Supreme Court decision that introduced and injected huge sums of money into our political campaigns. And he calls on Republicans to support the Disclose Act, which he and Democrats support, which would at the very least allow for the public to know who is funding these organizations. Again, this is not an organization, and I would refer you to them, but this is not an organization based on what they've said that is involved in political campaigns, that is involved in issue advocacy. Thanks all.
Finally, the New York Times reported over the weekend that donors who contribute and raise $500,000 for President Obama's Organizing for Action will get special access to the president. That's right, they're selling access to the president. The new group has an ambitious goal to raise $50 million to convert the president's re-election campaign into an advocacy network. And they're offering access. The New York Times says, quote, giving or raising $500,000 or more puts donors on a national advisory board for Mr. Obama's group and the privilege of attending quarterly meetings with the president, along with other meetings at the White House. Excuse us? This just looks bad. It looks like the White House is selling access. It's the definition of how you define selling access. If you believe money has a stranglehold over the entire political system, this is ceding the moral high ground, and the president always has from the moment he first announced his presidential bid in Springfield. 6 years ago, he stressed the need to curb the influence of special interests in Washington.
The cynics, the lobbyists, the special interests who've turned our government into a game only they can afford to play. They write the checks and you get stuck with the bill. They get the access while you get to write a letter. They think they own this government, but we're here today to take it back.
Even if they're not asking for a quid pro quo, it means that the people you're talking to all the time are folks who, they're not struggling.
I don't want somebody else pulling my strings. So everybody said, well, he's not going to be able to compete. This is the major disagreement that I have with Senator Clinton. Yeah, she's a smart and capable person, but she is of Washington. When she takes more money from lobbyists and special interests than any candidate, including John McCain, that shows that she doesn't have a sense that we've got to change how business is done in Washington.
Ultimately, what I'd like to see is a system of public financing of campaigns. And I'm a co-sponsor of the proposal that's in the Senate right now. That's what we have to fight for.
That was candidate Obama. During the 2010 campaign, the president railed against super PACs, then made an end justifies the means argument in 2012. Look, the Obama folks can rationalize this all they want. Yes, they'll be disclosing the donors. Yes, they'll be accepting small donor money. But this is the campaign finance world we live in after Citizens United. But offering this kind of access to big donors was precisely what Obama was campaigning against in 2007 and 2008. Every political strategist involved in the 2012 presidential campaign told us on the show, if you recall, that both sides on the aisle, they all believe the campaign finance system is a mess. And yet we continue to see a perpetuation of the so-called flawed system like we see with what's going on here. This is how a bad system becomes worse. I wonder what candidate Obama would say about this.